presence of a spiritual teacher is actually the most, it's like the fulcrum of our spiritual life. And so today we are celebrating the appearance day of Srila Prabhupada, who is a teacher in this great line of teachers that can be traced all the way back 5,000 years. And he was given this instruction by his teacher to take this knowledge all across the world and distribute it to people who would otherwise never have received it. So just to give a little background, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared 500 years ago, who is considered to be a form of Krishna. He's Krishna himself, who comes to relish what it is like to love the Supreme and to teach us how to practice spirituality in this very difficult age of Kali Yuga. And when he appears, he grants us this process. But at that time, this is what I was going to say. At that time, all of this knowledge was trapped in this sort of very small group of people who felt that they had the authority and the hegemony over this spiritual knowledge. And it was not granted to people who were considered to be on the periphery of society. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu broke that. It said that he broke that storehouse of love and distributed the contents to everyone without considering who is eligible and who is not.
Because India was going through a period of subjugation by the caste system. As we have heard so many times, people don't like caste system, where one caste tries to control or dominate another section of the society based on their birth, but they don't really have the qualification. So we see in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that this knowledge, this is not really a caste system. It is a division of the society based on our guna and karma. So Lord Chaitanya wanted to establish that based on a common platform of calling out to the Supreme by chanting his names. So he very consciously and in a very organized way, he wanted to dismantle this caste system by freely offering this highest knowledge to everybody, and especially starting from the lowest section of the society. And he wanted to not just keep it to India, where people felt that, this knowledge just belongs to India and others are fallen, but he actually wanted to distribute it to the whole world. And therefore through his teachings, he predicted that one day this knowledge will go to every town and village. And it took about 400 years, because everybody was wondering, how is this going to happen? How is this going to happen? How will the people from other countries who have no exposure to this culture of the Vedas, how will they take interest in it?
Yeah, and in fact, many times people even thought that it was just a poetic way of saying that this knowledge is going to spread in every town and village. But then when Srila Prabhupada, whose appearance day we are observing today, he was given this instruction by his teacher, because every teacher, so if he traces back the lineage, 3 generations back, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he tried to send books to Macmillan.
He sent it to many libraries around the world. And in a few libraries in London and in Canada, you can still find those books. So that was the objective of all these great teachers, that this knowledge should not be bound up within the shores of India.
And there are many reasons for it. One is, of course, there is the element of compassion, because people are looking for this knowledge, but also the preservation of this knowledge is very deeply linked to the propagation of knowledge. Otherwise, knowledge gets lost over a period of time. And so this knowledge needed to be taken outside the boundaries of India. And finally, Srila Prabhupada received this instruction from his teacher when the first meeting he went to visit his teacher, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. The time India was in the grips of still trying to secure independence from the British rule. And so Prabhupada was a young man, and he argued with Bhaktisiddhanta and said, who's going to listen to this knowledge that you are trying to talk of? First India has to become free. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati immediately retorted, and he said that this knowledge is so priceless that governments can come and governments can go, but this knowledge is above all sectarian, all political considerations, and it needs to be distributed amongst people of the world. And Srila Prabhupada took that to heart, and he spent the rest of his life just preparing for that. And eventually, when he was 69 years, he actually found, he didn't know how to get, he didn't have a passport, he didn't have money, like really, he didn't have any contacts. He didn't really have anything. But he spoke to the Scindia steamship company, and asked the lady. He would sit outside her office on the steps every day because he wanted a meeting with, what was her name? What's Scindia?
Sumati Morarji.
Sumati Morarji. He would sit outside in her office, outside her office, because they would not allow him to meet. And finally, one
for
day,
days and days and days, and this Sumati Morarji lady, she describes later that I would see him. He would come and sit, and despite being refused every single day, he did not give in. He just came, and finally, Prabhupada's determination changed her heart, and she said, "Okay, let me hear what he wants to. What is his proposal?" And then Prabhupada went and described to her program that he wants to take his books and he wants to go and share this knowledge because his guru has ordered him to do so. And Sumati Morarji was really kind of shocked because she was looking at a 69-year-old frail Bengali gentleman, and she was wondering how is he going to survive the harsh winter of New York and Boston, and he doesn't have any money. How is he going to survive, period? So she tried to dissuade Prabhupada that, Swamiji, you don't have this, you don't have that.
She actually told him that, Swamiji, you will die.
You will die, even on the journey.
And he said, yeah, just put me. He said, just get me one ticket. Like on she had a cargo ship, and the name of the cargo ship was Jaladuta, which means messenger of the seas, which is very, appropriate. And so then he gets on this cargo ship, and he's actually, he maintained a diary, a journal on that passage. And he actually celebrated Janmashtami. And along the way, he suffered 2 heart attacks. And in those heart attacks, he says that he felt that Krishna, he really called out to Krishna, and Krishna saved him. And after that, the ocean became very peaceful. And the captain actually commented that he had never seen such a peaceful voyage before. And actually, just to backtrack, when he got on the Jaladuta, there was no one to receive him. There was no fanfare. And the only person who came to see him off was his son. And when later his son was asked that, how did you feel about it? He said, I was so proud of my father. It was just basically getting on this Jaladuta, taking such a big risk, going to the other side of the world, not knowing what the outcome would be. And just before he got off the Jaladuta and he arrived at the Boston Pier, he wrote a poem. And I think that poem kind of really captures, what real true courage means. True courage means complete dependence and accepting the will of the Supreme. So should we just read briefly? We've never shared that with our group here, right? Okay, so what is it? And so he writes this poem where we'll just read. He says, my dear Lord Krishna.
Are you guys able to see?
No, they can't say this. My dear Lord Krishna, you're so kind upon this useless soul, but I do not know why you've brought me here. Now you can do whatever you like with me. But I guess you have some business here. Otherwise, why would you bring me to this terrible place? Most of the population here is covered by the material modes of ignorance and passion. Absorbed in material life, they think themselves very happy and satisfied, and therefore they have no taste for the transcendental message of Vasudeva. I do not know how they will be able to understand it. But I know your causeless mercy can make everything possible because you are the most expert mystic.
How will they understand the mellows of devotional service? Oh Lord, I am simply praying for your mercy so that I will be able to convince them about your message.
I think we can skip all of this. And okay. Yeah, from 11.
How will I make them understand this message of Krishna consciousness? I'm very unfortunate, unqualified, and the most fallen. Therefore, I am seeking your benediction so that I can convince them, for I am powerless to do so on my own. Somehow or other, O Lord, you have brought me here to speak about you. Now, my Lord, it is up to you to make me a success or a failure, as you like. O spiritual master of all the worlds, I can simply repeat your message. So if you like, you can make my power of speaking suitable for the understanding. Only by your causeless mercy will my words become pure. I am sure that when this transcendental message penetrates their hearts, they will certainly feel and gladdened and thus become liberated from all unhappy conditions of life.
Oh Lord.
O Lord, I am just like a puppet in your hands. So if you have brought me here to dance, then make me dance. Make me dance. O Lord, make me dance as you like.
I have no devotion, nor do I have any knowledge, but I have strong faith in the holy name of Krishna. I have been designated as Bhaktivedanta. And now, if you like, you can fulfill the real purport of Bhaktivedanta. So this is the poem. And I was just thinking that just going back to our reading of Bhagavad Gita, we can see, because we have been talking about performing our work in this mood of devotion and offering it as an act of love to the Supreme. And we can see that, Prabhupada got on this Jaladuta with that consciousness, simply as an act of offering. And he has no sense. We read this this beautiful verse in the Bhagavad Gita, Ahankara Vimuratma Kartaham iti manyate, where a person does something and he thinks that I am the doer. But right, even before the work has actually begun, Prabhupada's, the manifestation of what he has done has begun. You can see the consciousness of a person who is infused with this consciousness of transcendence. He has no sense of him being the doer.
He would always say that I'm just like a peon. I'm just repeating the message of these previous teachers. And my only contribution is that I'm able to repeat it in a language that people can understand. But he took no credit for his writings, because he said, I'm not creating any new concepts. I'm just repeating and that's why he called his Bhagavad Gita as it is, which means that he was just repeating the message of Krishna and all the previous teachers that came before him. Normally, a scientist or discoverer, they take credit for their discovery or invention by taking out a patent just to make sure that everybody knows that he did it. But Prabhupada, he gave all the patents to his previous teachers, all the credit to his previous teachers.
Yeah, and so that's the consciousness that we've been discussing in our third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And then after that, when he gets to Boston, he says, he writes in his journal that he didn't know whether to turn left or to turn right. And he landed in America with 40 rupees, right? Which was, I think, the equivalent of what, $7 or so? And
he could not even convert that anywhere. And
so penniless.
He was critically penniless. He had a bag of cereal, and he had boxes of Bhagavatam that he had got printed in India. And he had a sponsor in Butler, Pennsylvania, like a small town near Pittsburgh. And this guy's father was from Mathura, so he kind of sponsored Prabhupada. So Prabhupada, when he goes there, he lives there, and he tries to.
And his wife,
Sally
Agarwal, she's just, they put him up in a YMCA hostel, and he goes over there, and she, she really develops a lot of love for him, like she would for a father. She, in that video, if you ever watch it together, she talks about, we should watch that. She speaks about him. And anyways, but he sees that. So while he's there in Butler, Pennsylvania, he starts to understand what it's like, what America is like. But he also sees that, people there are just happy in their sort of everyday life, and there wasn't much interest. So he leaves sort of the comfort of that space in Butler, Pennsylvania, with Sally Agarwal and her family, Gopal Agarwal, and then he goes off to New York in the Bowery, which is where the hippies and just the drug addicts and just, it was just a really crazy place. And he goes there, and that's where he starts his journey, by sitting under a tree. His journey starts by sitting under a tree in Tompkins Square Park, and he just goes there and he starts to chant, and just by that, and he says, I didn't go there to attract a crowd. I just went there because I wanted to glorify the Supreme Lord.
So one day when he was chanting there, one of the local newspapers the correspondent, he just saw a very unique scene of a Swami. Nobody has seen a Swami like that coming to, most of the Swamis, actually, all the Swamis who came to New York, they went to the Upper West Side, which is like the affluent, super affluent part of New York. And the Swamis would go to their hosts' affluent living rooms and would give their classes or whatever, attracting this wealthy audience. So nobody expected a Swami to be present in the Lower East Side, which is like a really rejected part of New York. So when this correspondent saw Prabhupada chanting under a tree, he was like mesmerized and he just ran. We have to read that story. He just ran to his newspaper and he said, "Stop the press, stop the press." And so everybody was like, "What happened?" And then he said, "Well, I saw this Swami and then we had to print his article." And the editor said, "No, no, no, no. This is too late." And there was a whole argument between them. Finally, he convinced them to print that article. And so he wrote the article and he had a couple of pictures of Prabhupada. And that printing of that article was a turning point, because then this article, this newspaper would go to all the grocery shops in the Lower East Side, Lower East Village, and everybody, all the hippies and everybody would read that newspaper. So when they saw that article, then a lot more hippies actually started and joining Prabhupada and chanting.
One of those early followers actually is our own spiritual teacher, His Holiness Mukunda Maharaj, who's came to our session. He was one of the first people who met Prabhupada.
And he was a very accomplished jazz musician. And he was in New York to establish himself in the field of music. And when it was
getting quite popular too,
yeah,
from what we hear. And then that's when Mukunda Maharaj helped Prabhupada secure a storefront. And the name of the storefront, incidentally, again, was Matchless Gifts. It was like an old storefront that was, and it was like, that was the name, So Prabhupada started offering sessions.
But before that, like Prabhupada was looking for a place to live, and he found a sharing arrangement with this guy called David on the third or fourth floor of a really skid row Bowery building. And it was a loft. So Prabhupada had to climb down and up like 3 or 4 flights of stairs every day to meet his necessities. And this David guy was a drug addict. So occasionally he would just flip out on drugs. And one day it became so severe, his flip outs became very severe, and Prabhupada almost felt that this David guy was going to kill him. So Prabhupada
he charged at Prabhupada.
He charged at
that
Prabhupada.
He was going to kill him. So then Prabhupada just ran outside, and he didn't know anyone else but Mukunda Maharaj, who was at the time Michael Grant. So he goes off to, knocks on Michael Grant's door, and Maharaj opens the door, and then Prabhupada says, this David guy was just going to kill me. Can I stay here for a while? So then Mukunda Maharaj looks through the newspaper and finds this place called Matchless Gifts, which, by the way, you can still go today on 2nd Avenue and you can see these places. And then Prabhupada lives there. And he basically takes on at that age the great responsibility of tending to these young youth, of the lost youth of America.
So he started offering classes 3 days a week, Bhagavad Gita, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday in the evenings. And he put a little sign there. And then these hippies, they started coming.
And he would cook for them. He would cook a complete feast for them
on Sundays.
And and then he would feed them. He would serve them. And then they were not really trained in the whole Vedic culture etiquette. They would eat and they would leave. And then
without even cleaning the pots.
Yeah, without cleaning anything. And then Prabhupada would wash the pots and do everything. Finally, one day after a long time, one of them said, "Swamiji, can we help you?" And Prabhupada said, "I thought you would never ask." And so after that, then, this initial group that Prabhupada had, they became dedicated. And from there, it went to San Francisco. And then from there to London, Beatles, George Harrison. I mean, I will end with this because it's a long story, but there's this one story that shows the power of faith. Prabhupada was sitting on the bench in New York. By the way, Prabhupada had never seen snow. This was the first. He had these, pointy plastic shoes that he used to wear.
Yeah.
And, one time Prabhupada was sitting with a janitor on a bench, and this janitor asked Prabhupada, "Swamiji, how many students do you have?" And he said, "I have, thousands of disciples, but we are just separated by time.
Hundreds of temples and thousands of disciples.
Just separated by time." And later when somebody asked him that, "Did you ever feel you were so alone in New York when you were struggling?" Prabhupada said, I was never alone. I was always, he felt such intimate association of his own spiritual teacher and all the teachers in Krishna. So that is the power of someone whose consciousness is infused in this deep transcendental consciousness.
And his biggest contribution, people consider, are his writings. So what Prabhupada's daily schedule was that throughout the day, he would be interacting with his followers, his disciples, giving them personal time. He would spend like hours and hours with each person, giving them so much personal attention. And then like he would go to sleep at like, say, 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night, and then sleep for 2-3 hours, wake up before midnight. And then like around 11, he would wake up. And then from 11 to like 5 in the morning, he would be just translating these books using a dictaphone. So he carried with him the commentaries of all our teachers like Madhvacharya, Ramanujacharya, all these previous teachers, which was written in Sanskrit. So he'd read those commentaries, and then he would translate them into English. So word by word, every single verse of Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavad Purana, all these books, he would write every single night. He would spend hours writing these books. And in the morning, he'd offer Mangalarti, and then he would take a little bit of rest during the day, but he hardly slept. I mean, at the age of 69, you can see he was traveling 14 times around the world, but his writing program never stopped. Every single night he would write. And that's how he was able to write 60 or 70 volumes of work, which are deeply appreciated by all the professors around the world. And when you read these purports, we can see that this must have been written on some particular night where he was waking up just to share this knowledge with all of us.
So I guess we could go on, but we'd like to hear from you if you have any. So whatever knowledge that we receive, whatever we are receiving right now daily, there is the hard work, there is the sacrifice of great teachers who have painstakingly thought about our condition in this modern age, and the kind of angst and the kind of trauma and sadness and sorrow we are going to experience, the heartbreaks we are going to experience. And these teachers have been concerned about each one of us. And so,
for example, like Rupa Goswami, he appeared 400 years ago, and Rupa and Sanatan, they were two brothers and disciples of Lord Chaitanya. And they would, in Vrindavan, they lived in Vrindavan, and they traveled, they had these manuscripts, palm leaf manuscripts. So they had their bundle of palm leaf, and then they would travel, they would sleep from tree to tree. Every night they would sleep under a different tree, but they would write these books and preserve those manuscripts. There are some manuscripts, you can still see them in their original writing in Vrindavan. And they wrote these books so that we could benefit from them.
So the more we know about them, the more our hearts will melt, hopefully, and we will be able to experience gratitude and great intense desire to in some way reciprocate with them. So I guess we just want to hear from you guys, and then maybe we can chant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for this fascinating story about Prabhupada. The first time he has become a very concrete figure in my mind after listening to his story. Otherwise, I could, frankly, I could not, understand it earlier. But now I can clearly see, the kind of person he was.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Jyoti. So grateful for your presence. And
like the same thing happened to us the first time. But growing up, I had heard of Hare Krishna and the hippies, and I had some concept. I had no idea what this was all about. And the first time when both of us read Prabhupada's biography, it was quite a thrill or a thrill ride to read through his biography, because
we actually encourage you to read.
Yeah, fact was like what do you say? Fact,
stranger than fiction.
Stranger than fiction.
But also for me, it was like Bhagavad Gita coming alive. Like I felt that, oh, okay, this is what it means. Like when Arjuna is asking this question, how does he sit? How does he speak? How does he walk? How does he talk? So, you could actually see how a person who's in transcendental consciousness, what his activities are like. And the beautiful thing, which I really appreciate, is that we will never have access to Ramanujacharya's daily videos. Like, we don't have access to Madhavacharya and all these great acharyas. We don't know how, but with Prabhupada, the beautiful thing is that his every moment in life was captured, even in videos and also audio. So you have such an intimate portrayal of an acharya, how he lived his life. And what has always struck me is the degree of humility. Like, because of our background or whatever, there's always this discomfort when, you sometimes see Swamis portraying themselves as like, larger than life. But Prabhupada was just this really salt of the earth, grounded person who wasn't trying to present himself as, as like the person in the front seat. He was simply trying to be a servant of the servant of the servant. And he kept himself that way. Like, when his disciples, they would stand in line waiting for the bathroom turn, Prabhupada would stand in the line also. And so those qualities actually are actually what endears the heart. So the more we read about the qualities of a transcendental person, the more that affects our own consciousness and it clears our consciousness. So thank you, Jyoti. Anybody else?
So I'm thankful to the entire disciple succession, disciple succession, so that we are able to receive this.
Yeah. Thank you, Ganeshan Prabhu. And I think that's, it's really, the whole thing is actually, we are all a part of that chain. So it's so much to be grateful for. Thank you. Uma, anything from you? And maybe if you guys have time and if you're interested, this evening we could even watch this movie together.
This evening or
because morning may be hard and people have work. Like, I was thinking we could do it in the evening.
Oh, India time evening.
India time evening.
Hare Krishna.
Hey, Uma, Hare Krishna.
Look, hearing the story of Prabhupada, what I learn is how much of faith he must have had in Krishna and the way he has surrendered to Krishna.
Yeah.
It's something shaking. How is it possible to go from India to US without any penny and not knowing the future? So that I think that faith is what has, that he was carrying.
Yeah.
And, that is what is, that's the lesson I have learned. Despite so many challenges, what has carried him is that faith and the complete surrender.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's, that continues, like, even, as we analyze and look at his life closely, we see that quality of faith and surrender. And just being in America, with all the facilities, with a good salary, with a house, with all the security, it's not easy. You're dealing with a foreign culture, your accent is different. Back in the day, Prabhupada must have been quite an appearance, and so how did he plow through that? It's something that really hits you again and again. How do you reach out? In the beginning, he had a thick Bengali accent. And yet, and this is why we would love, if there is any interest, we'd love for you guys to, maybe all of us, to sit and watch some of these videos. It'll give us such a perspective of how this ancient culture was transplanted. And by the way, Prabhupada really tried in India, but somehow at that time, Indians were not so interested. That's when, So let us know if any evening works, maybe even a Sunday evening we could do, Saturday evening, Sunday evening.
Or we could do tomorrow morning, the same time, tomorrow Saturday, right? So it's a weekend.
Oh.
So we can break it into 2 sessions rather than just finishing the movie in one shot.
Yeah,
we can watch half.
But we have to see if there's an interest. Do you guys want to do that? Okay, Arvindan is saying. If you guys can just show by your, yes, Uma. Okay, Jyoti, would you like to also watch?
No, I'll be caught up in my classes right from 8 in the morning. That's the problem.
What about evening?
No,
No,
Saturday,
usually we talk
Sundays,
it out.
no. All day I'm caught up.
Oh,
So
really? Is
it'll
there
be a
any?
problem for me, because
No,
all
from
the
6 in the
senior
morning
students
to
come.
6:40.
Okay, we could just use the same time,
Yeah,
Lokita.
use the same time, like from 6 to 6:45 in the morning. We can watch one part and then next we can watch on Sunday.
That way there's no extra time.
That'll be so nice.
Okay, so let's do that then. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. See you.